My name is Bob Church. Grew up in Ocean City, Maryland. Started surfing back in, I can tell you the exact day, September 13th, 1963. Jeff Mumford and I were from, he was my next door neighbor. And we were down there, we used to surf on surf mats. And that was a big thing. They were like 3 feet long. They were commercial mats. We used to surf on those. This guy by the name of Edward Townsend Wright came up to us and said, "Hey, you guys want to try these things?" And we were like, "What in the world is this?" And he said, "I brought some surfboards from California." So we said, "Sure." So we took them, paddled out, and started riding them. He couldn't believe it. We could stand up the first time. And we had a ball. So that's where we all started. I think the really thing that got us going was we used to surf on these surf mats, and people would watch us. And of course, we had beach stands, so we went out every day standing up on these surf mats. I think it was a gimmick to get everybody to rent the mats because everybody thought they could do it. And then when Spyder brought the surfboards to us, I mean, that just started the whole thing. I mean, that day we started surfing and we never stopped. So then just stayed in Ocean City and surfed most of my life. Probably the greatest thing I've ever done because, it was a good sport. I was 13 years old, grew up doing it, got to travel a lot, got to surf for Hobie and got to surf for Dewey Weber, so it was great. My dad, back in 1959, bought a place called the Ocean Park Motel. It was built by Irvin Bainham. He built a lot of hotels down there. Jeff Mumford's dad had the Sandy Hill right next door to our hotel. That's how Jeff and I got to be such good friends. When we first bought it, we lived down in the basement. There were 2 apartments in the basement. We stayed there for the first couple of years. Then we went upstairs. My dad built a house over the coffee shop in the lobby. And I used to be able to go check out the waves. We really check out the waves in my parents' apartment because it faced the ocean. If the waves were good, we were gone. Back in, I think, 1969, a good friend of mine, Jerry Todd, who I went to school with, grew up with, and the waves were about 6 to 8 feet, perfectly glassy. He came over about 7:30, and we were getting ready to go and had his board locked up downstairs in our basement. And my mom, every once in a while, had to go in and cook because the chef wouldn't come in. And she's cooking, and Jerry went to get the key, and my mom said, "Jerry, we're busy, can't come out." And then after about the 3rd or 4th time, my mom said, "Jerry, I'm too busy." And he goes, "I just need the key." And all of a sudden, I hear the story that my mom's 4'11", comes out with a butcher knife, chasing Jerry down the front of the restaurant. And said, needless to say, Jerry didn't get to go surfing. He finally got to use my board, but my mom was not somebody to fool with. After the fall, we'd put wetsuits on, but after that, everybody got into skateboarding. And I remember we used to go to Assateague Bridge after they built that, and of course they didn't have the traffic, so we'd have to walk a half mile to get there. And we'd go there, and we had a ball. We had the bridge to ourselves, and the park rangers didn't bother us. The only problems we have is, depending on the time of the year, they had the expansion bits in there, and we would eat it a lot. It was wintertime, that they would just come out, and we'd be going down there. And I remember we had the Hobie skateboards, the Redwood and Balsa. They were so much fun in that they were short. And then they started coming out with longer boards. We got to be better. The good thing, there wasn't that many people surfing. But then when people started learning, we'd come out and they'd cut us off all the time. And you look at them and go, "What are you doing?" It was, the rule was, first one on the wave always had the right of the way of the wave and stuff like that. But I remember guys going by and picking the boards up as they're going down the wave and throwing the nose off and things like that. So those are some of the rules we had. We had a lot of guys come in from DC and from Baltimore, and they all came in. And at first we felt like they were invading our space, but everybody got to be such good friends. Tiny Tim, I'll never forget. He was a professional wrestler, and he got a surfboard that was like 12 feet long, and he was so big nobody said anything to Tiny Tim. We let him have his own fun. But then George Smith, quite a few other people came in. I would have never traveled if it hadn't been for surfing. I'm 17 years old going to California for the first time, and my parents are like, my mom's like, "You sure you want to do this?" I said, "Hey, we're going." We went for 2 weeks over Christmas holiday. Had a girlfriend, she's like, "You can't go." I said, "Hey, I'm going." We drove across country in Carl's van, and that was a little crazy. They let me drive for about 50 miles in Arkansas and said, "That's it." So I had to ride the whole way, 3,000 miles all the way to California. So we got there at Christmas. We had a ball. Surfed Huntington, went all the way down to Tijuana, and hit San Diego when it was really, really good. Went to Tijuana Screws. I'll never forget that. We got there, and every other night we had to sleep outside. 2 of us had to sleep outside, 2 of us inside. So I think Al and I were outside that night, and when we got there, the road was real rough. Potholes everywhere, and we went in, there was water on the roads, but we didn't understand. So we go there and we park, and the sheriff came down, chased everybody out but us. And we're like, what's the deal? You know, I guess he saw Maryland plates, didn't think anything. So he left. Well, we wake up the next morning, the road's gone. And there's a river there, and the tide had come in, and we can't get out. So we figured they're back on the shore watching us struggle. Of course, these guys were big, so we just pushed the van up and kept pushing it up until the tide went out. So we went surfing. We're the only 4 people there. It was great. The waves were great. So we got the last laugh out of all that. We went to Puerto Rico one time and got there and couldn't wait to get out to the Rincon, and got there, and there were 4 of us. And we could hear the waves that night. I mean, they were huge. And we looked at it, and I had a guy from California with us and 2 guys from, both of them from Baltimore. And we saw the waves. They were 10, 15 feet. And I'm like, 2 of us decided to go. And it took us an hour to get outside. And the waves were so big, I'm going, oh my dear. And my other 2 buddies sat on the beach, and we were camping out at that time. And one buddy, Tommy Arnold, said, I'm out of here. Saw the waves. He just couldn't take it. We called him Tommy Turtle. Had a little green board. That's when he had smaller boards. Had a little green board. And when he paddled, he had black hair, and he looked just like a turtle. So that was fun. But I remember, we traveled all that way, and it was big. So we stayed for about 2 months, slept on the beach. Puerto Rico was a lot of fun, but that was in the early 60s, mid-60s. So, and I'll never forget, there was a gentleman that would always pick us up at the airport named Kahuna. And we'd stay at his house, and he'd rent it out, really inexpensive. But at first, nobody bothered us. And then guys from California came in, and it got to be a good thing. But everybody watched out for each other. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel a lot and see stuff that a lot of people will never see. A good friend of mine, Don Gilstrap, had a 72-foot Hatters, and we went from here all the way to Barbados on that, and we were gone for 4.5 months. We went to Cuba. Never thought I'd get to Cuba, and spent a month there. And I mean, it's just been unreal. So I mean, without the oceans, you wouldn't be able to see anything. When we got to Cuba, I had a surfboard and a kayak, and some of the best waves. And again, I think the most incredible thing to Cuba are the people. People are so nice. And the other thing is, these guys are still surfing on plywood. I mean, on actual plywood cut out. And I mean, when I saw that, and of course, they've seen surfboards, but we stayed in Hemingway Marina, which is about 7 miles west of Havana. And there was a break there I'll never forget. I mean, long walls, clear, and the water's just unreal. And we were there probably in January, so we saw a lot of good waves, a lot of good swells come through. So that was unreal, and saw Hemingway's house and all his boats and stuff. And I mean, we saw stuff that you just don't expect to see. The first time I went in, had to get cleared through the customs department. And Don, we were taking medicine over there, and that was the only way we could go in. And I'll never forget, we took so much medicine, and we ended up giving it away. We had about 500 pounds of medicine on that boat, and people just unreal. I mean, they couldn't get aspirin, after I was there the first time, met some incredible people, and her grandmother was on heart medicine, and they were getting most of her medicine out of Spain, and she couldn't get any more. So I ended up coming back here and talking to some doctors, and they gave me medicine for free. The reps ended up giving it to me, so I flew back with that, and that saved the lady's life. I mean, she was in her 70s, and she lived for 10 more years, and hadn't been for that, she probably wouldn't have made it. I think probably surfing was one of the top things I've ever done, because I was younger and didn't have any liabilities back then, and I did it for quite a while. I don't do it as much today. I'm doing some paddle boarding, but not as much surfing as I'd like to do. But besides having children, I mean, it rated right up there as one of the top things I've ever done, because I was younger, got to travel, and got to meet a lot of neat people. I don't think you could beat it. I mean, there's a lot of good sports, but you start off at 13, you can still surf when you're 60. So I mean, I don't know how you just can't beat that. I mean, it's just a good sport. Whether there's waves or not, I mean, you sit on the beach and look out, and you see all kinds. We've seen whales here. Of course, we see the dolphins all the time. A lot of people fish here. The ocean's it's spectacular. I remember going out when I was a kid, going on sport fishing boats and seeing things I'd never see. I saw 60-foot whales and dolphins and just everything you can imagine.